There are hopes and treasures beyond your broken wing. There are hopes and treasures.
Hi everybody, I'm Deb Maybury and you're listening to Reveal, Connect, and Heal. Tonight I'm speaking with Rachel Grant. Hi Rachel.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going really good. It's great to finally connect with you.
Yes.
Now Rachel, on the web, you're sort of defined in different ways depending on which article that I'm reading. You're called a clinical psychologist, you're called a therapist, you're called a coach. So maybe you could just clarify exactly what it is you are.
Sure. Well, I am a sexual abuse recovery coach, and I work with survivors of childhood abuse who are pretty much just sick and tired of feeling broken and unfixable. And I really help them with moving on with their lives, letting go of the pain of the past. And it does get a little tricky sometimes because I do have a master's in counseling psychology. And so I did do that coursework, but I didn't go on to do the licensing that one needs in order to be technically a clinical psychologist or a therapist. And so sometimes people just make that assumption and it gets out there and I have to try to follow up with them and be like, no, call me a coach because I'm not technically a therapist. I don't do what therapists do. And even though, of course, I bring in some of the techniques and things from my training into my program, what I'm doing when I'm working with my clients is really working very collaboratively to go on this journey of healing. And as a part of that, using my own experience to lead the way.
Okay, so I want to get into just a little bit about your experience, but what really is the difference between a coach and a therapist? Because I also consider myself a coach
Right.
or a practitioner of this. But
Yeah.
we in Canada, you're from the Bay Area. Here, we can't use that therapy model. So, what is the distinction, in your opinion, between somebody who's coaching and someone who is a psychologist, for example?
Sure. Well, I think in some ways it comes down to focus and intention of the work. So I think therapists are very much trained to create a safe space for people to bring in whatever they want to bring in and put it out there to be heard, to be seen, to get some guidance and, a little bit here and there. But for the most part, the therapist is a bit of a sounding board and is often very focused on diagnosing. Yeah, getting them put into a very particular, like
Label.
you have this, yes.
Yes.
And when I was doing my degree, I was considering going into therapy, but I pretty quickly realized that it wasn't the right fit for me and that coaching was, because as a coach, what I get to do is really bring in my own experience much more, talk about that, share that. And as a survivor of sexual abuse, I felt that was really important because in my journey, part of what was really hard a lot of the time was knowing what the other side might look like and feeling like I could find a role model or somebody to kind of show me. And not that I'm perfect, I still have all sorts of stuff, but that I can say to people, look, I know what you are going through. I've been there. I've been in that angry rage. I've been in that disconnection. I've been in that curled up in a ball in the corner, crying my eyes out, thinking nobody was ever going to love me. And today, none of those things are happening for me. And I think that's really powerful, as well as the opportunity to just be able to be very structured. My program, not all coaches are like this, but my program is really very step by step. We're going to start here. We're going to do this. We're going to go here, like that. And so most people, when they go into therapy, are looking for a little bit more room to explore lots of different things. Whereas as a coach, it's like, this is the focus. This is what we're going to do. And I'm going to make sure you do it because I'm going to give you homework. I'm going to give you, a kick in the butt if you need it.
Love it. Yeah, love it.
That.
I love it. Yeah, I think with therapy, I know some people that have been going to therapy for years and years and years, and they still haven't got to the core issue.
Yeah.
Which often is the sexual abuse. So
That's right.
share a little bit about, how did this all come about for you? Where did this all start?
Sure. Well, when I was 10 years old, I was sexually abused by my grandfather. And that was obviously the starting experience that changed my life. And for me, when the abuse started, I was really confused and scared and didn't really understand what was going on. And so, like so many survivors, just didn't say anything and just kind of was dealing with it. On one hand, still kind of the same old me laughing and goofing off, but then there was also this kind of quiet, scared, unsure self that was starting to be created, really.
And was he living with you? What was the
Yeah.
situation?
He did. He lived with me and my mom and dad, and my older siblings were already out of the house at that point. And when my parents found out what was going on, my mom one day actually just caught him as he was abusing me, which was tough. That was a tough moment for sure. But they got him out of the house right away. But what I figured out very quickly was that even though he was gone, like all the pain and all the junk wasn't, right? And
Sure,
so
it was just beginning.
only just taking him away would have solved it all, right?
Yes.
And my parents wanted me to go to therapy and wanted me to talk to someone. But at that stage, I was like, nope, not gonna do it. There's no way in hell. Can I curse? I don't even know if I can
That's
curse.
totally fine.
That I'm gonna talk to somebody about what's happened to me. So,
Were you still 10 at that time?
yeah, it was 10,
Oh, you're
11.
very young. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I would literally like run away to the woods so they couldn't find me and take me to this therapist. So,
Well, it's just so confusing. I mean, that's the exact time, when the significant part of my abuse was happening was 10, 11 years old. You're old
yeah,
enough to kind of make a decision not to tell or to remove yourself from this situation in some cases.
yeah,
But, in your case where your parents did want to help and then you're old enough to be really stubborn and get
yeah,
away, and there's that shame or that feeling of dirty,
yes.
and I just want to forget.
Yeah, that's right. So I did try that for all of my teens and into my 20s, and it worked a little bit here and there but for the most part, I was, didn't know how to connect with people or trust. And when I hit my 20s and was trying to have my first like love real relationship, it became real clear real fast that I was not equipped for that. I didn't know what to do, and that this stuff, this abuse and all the things that I'd come to believe about myself and men and relationships, it was not very good and was really getting in the way. So I did go to therapy at that point and read some books. But after talking about it, as we're saying, like I was getting better in some ways. But after a little bit of time of that, I mean, honestly, Deb, I got so sick and tired of talking about it. I was like, if I have to tell this story one more time or regurgitate the same stuff over, or I have another insight, but then nothing changes, I'm going to, go crazy here. And so I changed the questions that I was asking in therapy. I started wondering, like, what do I do about this? How do I actually move on? And I was really surprised at the lack of response that I was getting. People were treating it like it was going to be a lifelong sentence. I was just going to be stuck this way and might get a little bit better, but, pat on the back, good luck to you kind of thing. And
No, thank you so much for saying that,
yeah,
because that is so clear that the more I think you need to open it and talk about it, but the more you talk about the same
yes,
things, it just builds in your mind. It just goes into
yeah,
those repetitive thoughts that just
it
it's just an
does.
echo that goes on forever. So
Yep.
had you already started your education at this point, or where were you?
No, I was in my young 20s and so around my mid 20s is when I started asking these questions. And that's what spurred me on to do my master's, and probably more importantly, the study of neuroscience, just a self-study, because I was like, that is the total wrong answer, and there has to be a way here. And so I actually started my business when I started my master's. I was like, I'm not waiting. Like, we're doing it all at the same time. And so I
Love
started kind of thinking about, like what it would really look like to develop a program, what I need to learn. And so I kind of used myself as a guinea pig, like, well, let me try this, let me try that. And I did come to learn that part of, what's going on in the brain when we're talking about things is we are reinforcing the neuronal pathways. We're reinforcing the beliefs that we have. And so while it's really important to have the opportunity to share what we've been through, to not have, hold it in, to express it, at some point, continuing to do that actually begins to harm us rather than heal us.
I'm so glad that you said that. I've done a fair amount of studying in trauma as well myself, and incorporate that into some of the coaching that I do. And what I find really fascinating about the brain is actually also depending on the timing of when somebody was violated. That you start off with this wonderful, innocent child, enthusiastic, the curiosity is there, and then there's this trauma and this sexual trauma, and then it becomes survival mode, and that turns into avoidance. How do I avoid that person? How do I avoid that situation? How do I avoid that thought? And it's just like that gets reinforced, and then you get a person who's 25, 35, 65, who's still just trying to survive the trauma and avoid the experience or the memory.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's really right. And so I got really excited about this. Like as soon as I started noting, like, oh my gosh, okay, so what I have to do is basically retrain my brain. I need a little boot camp for the brain, right? And what would that look like? And what would I have to do? And how would I change the way I talk? How would I change the way that I relate to people? And so all of that came together into what is now the Beyond Surviving program. And the great work that I get to do with clients all over the country and internationally, and then so of course for myself, most importantly, not most importantly, but some days it feels most importantly, I feel like my life is just so different. I was telling a friend the other day, like my new normal is kind of boring. There isn't the big ups and downs, and there aren't big explosive arguments with my partner to make sure that he really cares, and all sorts of time and attention spent on, trying to manage or cope or handle something. But instead, it's just kind of like, yeah, this is my day and I'm going about it, and lots of, beautiful people in my life and connection and joy, and can't believe it some days how different it is. And the fact that I get to share that with other people and go on that journey, man, I mean, I just can't think of anything better to do with my time. Yeah.
That's great. So somebody comes to see you and they're a mess. Where do you begin? They haven't told anybody.
Yeah. Well, generally speaking, I often don't work with people who haven't done any work at all around the abuse, because I really think of recovery as 3 stages. And so if you kind of imagine the person, like kind of like you're saying, we are all this like perfect, beautiful, wonderful self. And then because of abuse, we end up with these layers of junk on us, right?
Yes.
Like beliefs like I'm ugly, I'm dirty, I'm gross, nobody's ever going to love me. Avoidance behaviors like you were talking about, coping behaviors like eating or not eating or cutting, and all these different things that are going on. Well, I kind of think of this first stage, which I call the victim stage, as you're like, what layers? There aren't any layers there. I don't have any layers. What are you talking about? Like just complete, don't even want to see it. Yeah, forget about it. And then I really think of the second stage as the survivor stage, when you're finally like, okay, the layers are there. Let me look at them. Let me understand them. Let me see. Let me talk about it finally. Let me acknowledge it. And then the stage where I like to most work with people is what I call the Beyond Surviving stage, which is all about, can we get those layers out of here? I don't need those anymore, right? And so most of the people who come to me are in that place. They've tried everything. They've been to therapy. They've read the books. And they just are still feeling like they're broken, they're stuck, nothing's shifting, and they're ready to just learn the skills and tools that they need in order to let all of that go and really move on.
Can you give an example there?
Yeah.
Some basic rewiring that you would begin with.
Sure. So the very first thing we do in my program is the little boot camp for the brain. So, for instance, one of my clients had this belief that he was responsible for the abuse. And, one of the major false beliefs that we have of it's my fault, right? And so through some exercises that we do, we first of all identify the experience that we're using to come up with that belief. So for him, it was the fact that he would come home from school and he would play his rock music like really loud. And he knew it bugged his mom and she would get upset and it, antagonized her. But when his mom got upset, she wouldn't just come in and like turn the music off or take away his stereo. She would beat him very severely. And so he had made the connection that because I played the music, my mom beat me, therefore it's my fault.
Yeah, of course. That
Right?
makes sense logically. Yes. In the brain. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we put those things together, right? And so we did this exercise where we basically separate choice and cause. So you imagine it's kind of like 3 columns where there's the what happened, the person who chose to do it, and then how you would apologize or make amends for it, right? And so, of course, the first what happened is he played his music really loud. And the person who chose to do that was him.
Yes.
And then could he make amends for that? Well, yeah, he could. In the moment, he could have apologized to his mom and not done it again. As an adult, he could go back to his mom and say, I was a really bratty teenager. I'm sorry that I kept playing my music that way. The second what happened is mom beat me, right? Mm-hmm. So now when we look at the next column, the choice, like who really made that choice? Well, it's mom. And then when we get to that last column of how would you make amends for her making the choice and how she responded to your choice? And I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like I can't make amends for something she did. Therefore, I'm not responsible. So in that moment of him really getting that, it was like, okay, like I don't have to carry around this idea anymore that I'm the one to blame, that I'm the one that's fault. And what opens up when we do that is all of a sudden we start to actually believe that our own needs and our own desires deserve to get met. Mm-hmm. So we started dating. It's amazing how it like all trickled out. So he started dating. And when he started the program, he said to me, I don't care about all that relationship stuff because I'm done. I'm just so done. But by the time we worked through all of this, he was out there dating. And not only did he start dating, he then moved in with the girl. And not only did he move in with the girl, he proposed. So it's stuff like that. I mean, I have lots, yeah. So that's a for example.
That's a great example. It's amazing what you do find when you clean your house and when you've been living in the same house for a long time. There's a lot of junk packed in there, right? So I mean that's a great example, and it's so interesting. People that haven't been violated or experienced similar type of trauma find it so hard to understand. How could you feel so guilty? Like you're not to blame.
Yeah.
And yet there are so many people. I mean, gosh, most of the people that I've worked with, on some level or another, feel guilty, and that's one thing that I didn't feel. I didn't feel guilty, and the people that have the extreme guilt, it's just so hard to understand and to get through to them that this is never your fault. You did nothing,
right?
Nothing at all. So that's a great example.
Yeah.
One thing, if I can just go back to it, because it often surprises people. Traditionally, in sexual abuse, it would always be it's the uncle, it's the man next door, or it's your father or stepfather, but it's not the grandfather, it's not the mom, and the two things that that have been mentioned. Now, I mean, you said it was physical abuse with him. I don't know that it was something else, but I mean, that's still, you just don't expect that. And can you speak to that at all? What's your experience with the people that you work with?
Yeah.
Because I think it's a myth that needs to be broken.
It is a huge myth. Yeah, absolutely. Both my male and female clients have been abused by all types of people, from mothers to fathers to neighbors to teachers. Men are abused by men. Men are abused by women. And there really is no one person who, falls outside of the potential category of being an abuser. And the work that I get to do with my male clients in particular is really wonderful, because this particular group, male survivors, it's like they're just now starting to get the freedom of expression that female survivors got like in the 80s, 90s, where all of a sudden it wasn't so taboo to talk about. And some would argue that it's still very, very taboo in some circles. But I think, my 20-year-old clients, they are not dealing with the same kind of keep the silence stuff that my 40, 50-year-old clients, did. They're much more quick to name the problem, to seek help for the problem, to go on Facebook, and look around and share what's going on with them and all of that. And I feel like my male clients are kind of in that stage too, in the beginning stages now. So every time they get to come forward and be heard and get support, I love that. But that's definitely one thing that I've learned through the time that I've been working with people, is that everyone comes with all sorts of experiences, and all of it's hard. None of it is like, well, it's not so bad as, that's one thing I teach my clients, is that trauma is not a competition. We're not keeping score here, like, regardless of what you experience, because that's another way we minimize and dismiss it, right? Like, well, I was only abused once, or I was only abused for, a short time, or at least it wasn't my father, The
comparison game.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of to belittle your own self-worth. That's a whole topic in it.
Exactly.
In itself. So I want to ask you one
Yeah.
more question. Christmas is coming, the holidays are coming, and families get together. And as we both know, the majority of sexual abuse happens within a family. And so talk a little bit about boundaries, and maybe help people can stay safe emotionally over the holidays. Do they visit? They don't visit? Some tips. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing that I've come to learn in this particular area is that it always does come down to tuning into your choice. That there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of ideas of you should just go, and it's your family and whatever, in that place of obligation. Okay. And for survivors, we're actually very used to operating from the space of obligation, right? I just got to take whatever's dished out to me. I don't have any say here. And so stepping away from that and really recognizing that you have absolute total choice about what you decide to do, and you're not bad or wrong, for what choice you make, I think is really important. And building up a support system and a network of people around you who get it, who understand it, who aren't going to make you feel bad or strange or weird. One of my clients, actually, this was a big thorn in her side. Just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this, and she's like, well, what do I tell people when they ask me about what I'm doing for the holidays? I said, well, what are you doing for the holidays? She said, well, I'm going to spend it with my daughter, and we're just going to have a nice dinner at home together and cook for each other and, hang out. I said, well, that's what you tell them.
What was she thinking?
And she was like, well, wait, don't I have to explain why I'm not going to my parents' house and why they're not going to be there? And, I said, no, you don't. It was like a big oh my gosh, what? I don't have to tell everybody everything and explain it all out and tell every detail of it all. No, not at all. And so that's, I think, the other thing that hopefully maybe can bring people some ease is you don't actually have to say more than you want to. You can share what you want to share and then put a period on it. And if people push and pressure, you can be like, that's what's for breakfast. Divert.
That's great. I think a coach can say more things like that than a therapist would say, well, tell me more about how you feel about not going there for Christmas.
Exactly.
The person just wants to just tell me something, maybe something you did, or something so concrete that they can actually walk out the door and feel like they're moving forward in this moment with some antidote that you can just provide something like that.
Yeah,
But that's a great
exactly.
tip. Anything else that you'd like to share? Please say your website where people can find you.
Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to share here as we close up?
Sure. Well, people can find me at rachelgrantcoaching.com. And you can certainly hit up the website. There's some resources there for you. I'm doing this radio show now and podcasts and the blog. So I really love bringing lots of great resources to my community. Certainly connect with me on Facebook is another great way. And if anyone is curious about the Beyond Surviving program, if they're like, oh, that kind of sounds like where I'm at and what I'm looking for, then anyone who's interested can sign up for a 60-minute Discover Your Genuine Self session. It's an opportunity to meet with me for an hour and really explore kind of where you're at right now and where you want to go and what's getting in the way. And of course, we'll figure out if the program is a good fit for them. And if not, then I point them towards other resources. I've also worked, as you have too, like make sure you're interconnected, right, with people in your community and know other places to send folks if we're not a good fit for them. So that's how people can get in touch with me. And I'd love to hear from anyone who I can be of a help and support to.
Well,
and then,
thank you for offering that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
of course.
were you going to say something else?
Well, I was just going to say a final thought if we're at that point, but am I jumping the gun?
No, please go. You have something else to share? I know how long people actually listen to these videos, so yeah.
No, I
give your
just
best
wanted
last piece of advice.
Yeah, I guess it was really just I think what I want people to know more than anything, because I've said a lot of different little pieces, but the biggest thing I think is to really know that you are not stuck like this. Like, you do not have to stay here forever. It's not a life sentence. And I get the feeling sometimes of hopelessness, and I've tried it all, and but there really are lots of great resources and people available to support you and guide you through that. So, take whatever steps you can to let all that shit go and step forward into like your best, most wonderful self and live it. Yeah.
Very powerful message, because people do get stuck, and they do go from this type of therapy to that. And I think it's so important to keep looking and look for the connection. It's not, I believe personally that it's not the therapy or the coaching or anything like that. It's the connections that you find that will that move you forward. Because if you connect with somebody, and of course you have to have a program that makes sense, obviously, but if you connect with somebody, I find that in group work,
yeah,
it's just knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's so powerful to come out of that wounded, angry place into a place where you see some upward momentum, where you feel like you understand what's going on, and that there's a shift that happens. And
so true.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thanks,
Please, viewers, please go to her site. There's a lot of information. You've done a number of interviews, a lot of information, a lot of direction, just like on my site. It's not about, Rachel or myself. It's about you finding the right fit for yourself, and those resources are right there. So thank you, Rachel. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Deb. Yeah, it was fun. Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks to the viewers. You've been watching Reveal, Connect, and Heal. I'm Deb Maybury, and I've been speaking with Rachel Grant.
There are hopes and treasures beyond your broken wing. There are hopes and treasures beyond your broken wing. Ooh, beyond your broken